I am actually doing my live show. Tickets are now on sale. It's on June 5th, Wednesday, June the 5th, in central Manchester at a place called The Social Refuge and Queer Lit. It's a bookshop, coffee shop, performance space thing, you know, very Manhattan-y, but in Manchester, and I'll be there. And you can get tickets via the link in the show notes or by looking on Eventbrite. It's called F Me, I'm Old, and it's all about being queer and over 40 and absolutely fine with that. I'm fine with it, absolutely fine. And I have just noticed that while I'm recording this, you can see grey hairs. There's grey hair. Oh, that's not a prop, that's actually just in my hair now. I think it might be the show that's just stressing it out of me because it's 2 weeks away. Tickets are available and selling fast at an insultingly cheap price, I think, but the venue insisted. Anyway, I suppose I should really get around to writing the fucking thing. Anyway, if you're a Patreon supporter, do check the Patreon feed because there will be instructions on how to get free tickets if you want to come and watch, because you already support me and I'm not going to make you pay to watch me cry on stage because you've already paid to watch me faff about on here for God knows how long. Feels like forever, doesn't it? I love you. Thank you very much. Please keep supporting me. It's this or a real job. Let's not think about that too much. Crashing on today's episode. Yes, I am joined by Karl Dunn, who is going to be talking to us about the darker side of gay marriage. What is to say, gay divorce. And how gay divorce brought him surprisingly close to some straight guys. And I'm going to leave that there just for you to imagine until we get around to talking about it in the episode. I'm hoping I've baited you with that little moment. Have I baited you? I have been told that when it comes to baiting, I'm a massive Hello, editor version me here. Hello. As you can tell from the spectacles, what do you think? Do I look kind of sexy librarian-y? Hope so. Anyway, this episode with Karl was really fun to record, but it turned out to be about an hour and a bit long, which seemed quite a lot to put out in one go. So, if you're on the Patreons, you'll get to hear the whole thing more or less unedited. So, there's another reason to join the Patreon. If free tickets to my live show and getting to listen to all the episodes without ads wasn't enough, there's also all the extra material. Patreon.com/probably true. If you want to support this delightful little show, keep me in the house, essentially, and also get some additional material, then go for it, please. And thank you. Thank you so much. I love you and your money. Anyway, enjoy. This is Probably True. Please be aware that the following contains strong language and adult themes. It would be boring without them.
Well, let's start with marriage. Okay. The story of my marriage takes place in America. So I'm Australian, moved to America, met a guy, and I'm like, this is it. It was great. You know, like I've chased these rainbows. I've got to the top of the corporate ladder in America, and I've met the guy, and I campaigned hard for our right to get married in the States. In America, it's very state by state, as everybody who watches the news knows. So in California, we had it. Then Prop 8 came along and we lost it. And then we had to campaign hard and we got it again. So there I was campaigning hard with everybody outside the courthouses, yelling, doing all the bits that everybody needed to. And we got this thing passed. And so I was like, okay, well, now that we can, we definitely, I should do this. And I just jumped into it. I proposed to my ex-husband and we got married. And
he wasn't your ex-husband at the time. You proposed to him.
Not at the time, no.
Before he,
Little did I know that we would become each other's ex-husbands. But it was a transformative moment. Like, when I walked into the office with my engagement ring on the Monday, because I'd done it over a weekend and walked into the office on a Monday, I mean, my work partner jumped out of his chair. He's like, oh my God, you did it, and there's like bear hugs and back slaps all around. And then it was the most amazing thing. The word went around the office so fast. And then every single straight married guy in the building, guys I've only seen in the hallways, right? Coming in and they're like, dude, congrats. And they're all hugging me. Like, it was wild. It was like I was in this like club. And I suddenly realized, it's like, okay, you'll never completely understand my life and I'll never completely understand yours, but we've just done this thing. And they know exactly what this thing is, to like buy the ring, find the moment, get down on one knee, ask the question, put the ring on the finger of this person you love, and that this is it. Like, they've done that. And we had this now in common. It was wild, And this one guy said to me, now that you're engaged, you've just made my marriage bigger. So I felt like, wow, man, I am doing the gay God's good work here. I mean, I was like, I'm being such a good gay doing this, like, and it felt great. But here's the bit where it all started to go. The first like warning signs was that after that moment, it was the first time in my life where I actually felt like I was as good as they were. Oh. And that's the bit I loved. I loved feeling like I'm as good as everyone else now. And I hated how much I loved it. Because all it was a ring. It's just a ring on my finger. Like, nothing else had changed. But in the eyes of everybody else, I had changed. It is still celebrated as this pinnacle achievement in our society. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But here's the thing, and I think this is, we did not ask enough questions about what marriage was on our way into it. It was very much a case of, I think like any minority group, when you're fighting against a greater part of society that has decided you're not allowed to have this, and they put it behind barbed wire, your focus and your energy goes on the barbed wire, not on, wait a moment, what's actually that thing, really? And after the engagement part, another guy in the office came over to me and he said, I wanted to say congratulations, but I was just curious. Like, it was just him and me. He wanted a quiet moment. He's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I don't get it, because like, you don't have to. Like, it's not an option for me. Like, at some point, I've got to do this. Like, you don't have to do this, so I don't get why you're doing it. And at the time, I couldn't hear it, and when you're a nail, everything seems like a hammer, right? So, I was kind of offended, actually, at the time, because I was high on this newfound equality drug, magical ring thing, And
sparkle.
I mean, nothing sparkled as brightly as that ring. Didn't even have a diamond on it, but I know.
Sorry, carry on.
But it was, what I realized, though, what he was asking me, and I didn't kind of figure it out until much later, is it was a good question. Like, why are we doing this, actually? Because it's a convention invented by a society that until about 5 minutes ago, they haven't really been particularly nice to us. And it's one of their things, and we just ran for it. And I wished I'd asked myself a lot more questions going into it about, what is marriage? Where does it come from? What's the idea of it? What does it mean to me, spiritually, emotionally, financially, all of these things? And I wished I'd asked those of myself, and that my ex-husband had done the same thing, because I think we both made massive assumptions on the part of the other one about what this actually meant. And then when it did not go well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and I have to own my 50% of why it all went off the rails. But when you want to get out of a marriage, wow, man, that is some. It's not a breakup. Newsflash: it is not a breakup. What you don't realize when you get married is that you're not married until you sign a marriage certificate. Right. And the wedding and the thing in the church and the big celebration, all that, like, no one cares. That has literally zero value for the government. Once you sign that marriage certificate, you sign the ownership of your marriage over to them. You don't own it anymore. It's no longer yours. So when you want out, it's not your rules, it's their rules. And what I found when I was getting a divorce was that we didn't win the right to marriage. We won their right to marriage. So we won their right to a divorce, or what they think is fair for heterosexuals, because divorce law is written for the battle of the sexes as they stood at the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s. In California, it's a no-fault divorce state, so you can't, everything's a 50-50 split. You can't introduce any extenuating circumstances or why the thing, it was designed to help women get out of shitty marriages without having to hire private investigators to get a burden of proof against, their husbands or whatever. So great.
As soon as one of you says, I want out, and essentially presses that button, that starts the process of it
Yes.
ending. Like that, you don't have to go to court and argue your case for it ending. It's just,
It's
you know what?
it's over. Yeah.
No, this is not working. I want out.
Yeah.
Done.
Yes.
Okay. Well, not done, but like that's yeah, you don't need a reason or proof or anything. You just need not feeling it. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. That itself is a very awful experience because it's designed to be drawn out. Like from the moment one of you says I want out, it's a minimum 6 months and 1 day in California. You cannot divorce in anything under that. And again, it's out of your hands. You don't get a say in this.
Which is bizarre when like you can meet someone and get a quickie married. You can get married in a weekend.
Oh, you can
You
get
can walk up to like there's drive-through chapels. It's like you don't.
yeah,
Sorry, carry on.
So it's and then trying to get out of one is it's crazy what is involved to get out of a marriage. And when you encounter these divorce laws that are clearly not written with us in mind. You know, these were written before our existence was even legal. These laws predate that. So they were not written for us. And, you know, while I have empathy for women and how women have been treated in the institution of marriage and divorce for centuries, their mistreatment, it's awful. And it's still not where it should be. You know, it is still the laws and the social mores are lagging behind everywhere. But like, no disrespect to any divorcing heterosexuals, but like, that's got nothing to do with us. Like, my marriage was gendered, but in a very, very different way. And the ending of it doesn't have to make up for the mistreatment of women. But these are the laws that are in place. And it became really obvious, like, as the one, like in California's culture, as the one who earns more and the one who earns less, which we know for all the wrong reasons, usually the man and the woman, right? You know, you suddenly rock up as the guy and you are being treated like a villain. And it's something that straight guys were saying to me who I met who were divorced. It's like, yeah, somehow it's your fault. If she left you, you must have done something wrong. If you left her, you're a bastard. Like, you don't win as that. Like, there's no way to win in that role. So as a same-sex divorcee, going through this whole system was pretty awful and very clear that it wasn't really meant for you, but you've just got to live with the existing laws. So, you know, divorce happens. A friend of mine asked me, would you ever get married again? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. He goes, well, why'd you get married in the first place? And I was like, yeah, why did I get married? And that's when, coming back to what I was talking about before, I sat down and I made a list, top 5 reasons why I got married. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be super honest. Like, why did I do this? You know, the first one was good. The first one was because I was in love with this man and I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. So that's cool. That's
seems
nice.
Yeah, I'm glad that's number one. That seems like the main reason people get married.
But love is not a byproduct of marriage. I didn't need to marry the guy to be in love with him. And really, the nature of it, because we'd lived together so long and we were registered domestic partners, it did not change in the eyes of the law. So I was like, okay, well, it felt very noble, you know? And reason 2 was for the cause. Like I said, you know, we fought so hard for that. I thought, well, I've got to be a good gay and do this because we can do it now. And I fought for it. So it's a bit disingenuous if I don't then do it. But doing something for the cause is not a great idea because the cause doesn't have to live with you or with your husband and deal with all of your problems and dishwashers and bills and the pressures of a marriage. The cause is not going to help you out with that. And so while I think it's great that we can do this, and I'm glad I fought for it, I would say, you know, I wish that hadn't been one of the driving forces to do it just because we could, just because I felt like I should. It's also not a great reason. You get tax breaks, which is super weird because, like, you know, why we reward that is kind of crazy. But anyway, it goes down a list. But the fifth reason why I got married, and this was the worst part, was I got married to this guy because I didn't think I would ever meet someone as hot and awesome as this guy who was into me. And I wanted that on lock. And like, he did not go out. He was not not on the scene at all. So when I rocked up with this guy, when we first started dating, people were like, oh my God. It was like I was dating the Giselle Bündchen of the bear scene. And out of nowhere, like no one had seen him. I was just like, and all these guys who never gave me the time of day before now suddenly wanted to know me, wanted to meet my partner, And, I would look at them and I'd be thinking to myself, it's like, that's right, bitch. That's what I've got at home. Mm-hmm. Awful, terrible. And, another reason I got married, like I'd said about, doing it for the cause, another reason I got married, because there was definitely a kind of revenge aspect in it. I loved saying my husband, and it definitely on one side felt like an act of love every time I said it. And I loved that part. I genuinely loved that. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that there was also a part of it that was like, it felt like an act of protest as well. And it felt like an act of revenge. Hey, all of you who've been taking away our since forever. Well, guess what? We got one of yours now. How's that feel? How's that feel? Terrible. This is a terrible reason to get married. But if I'm honest, these two things were huge. This like revenge part against greater society and my own dark insecurities that I was not prepared to deal with myself. So if I got married to this super hot dude who'd already been externally validated by all these people, his job now will be to wave a magic wand and make all my dark go away, because I don't want to have to do that job. It was horrible in here. I didn't want to go in there, so rather have someone else do it for me. And also, the best part, don't tell them that that's their job. I'd assigned this job
Might scare them off. You want to,
exactly.
You need to like subtly slide that in like over time. They're stuck with you now, so it's their job to fix.
Exactly. And then I imagine my ex-husband, it's quite possible he had a list just as bad as mine. And here we are getting married, and now everything's supposed to be all, happily ever after. And it wasn't. And I think this is the conversation we're not having about marriage is, I think we as a community need to, I'm not anti-marriage and I'm not pro-marriage, but I'm very much pro-choice, which is your personal informed choice about why you're doing this. And to get really, really honest with yourself, because if you don't do that before you get married, it'll come out later and you'll have to deal with it later. Do it before you get married, because also getting out of one is, yeah. Love and marriage.
Yay! Happily ever after.
Oh my God, awesome. So that was my take on that. And for any heterosexual listeners of yours, wow, man, we've been in there. We've had a look around. We've seen it. Woo, God bless you. Although actually, I will say in its favor, there were things I learned about relationships that I learned because I was married. And I don't know if I could have learned them in other ways, but marriage was how I learned it, because, I think there's also, I would say this as well in every relationship I've been in, there's a moment where I've tapped out. And it's not the moment it ends. It's the moment where I go, I'm not going to have this fight again. Just not going to do it. Mm-hmm. Or it's like, I could say that, or I can just watch another Game of Thrones and just throw side eye on the couch. And now I'm cognizant of it, but that's when I'm preparing the exit. And it just becomes this long, slow decline into, you going, I've had enough, or your partner going, see you later. And, when I was married, it was like, oh, this is forever, which is what I was thinking at the time. Oh, we're actually going to have to figure this out. Or if we can't figure it out, we do have to come to a compromise that we're both happy to live with. And that took a bit of adult shit that I hadn't had to do before. And I'm grateful to marriage for that, because that's how I learned it, but it wasn't cheap. I would just say to anyone, if you can figure out how to get that honest with yourself and your partner, it will serve you very well.
Before you sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the Straight Boys, which I thought was going to be lead into one of those scenarios that I used to have on DVD under my bed, but apparently not.
No, there was definitely no sort of boom. there was definitely none of that involved. But
Oh. I suppose you should tell the story anyway, I guess.
yeah, I mean, it's still kind of worth hearing. I don't know. So there was one part of my divorce that I was not expecting. So once I'm in it, and like I'm really in it, and it's all going horribly wrong. So I start this insane divorce that my ex-husband and I turned into a money fight. Like it was lawyers at 10 paces from the get-go. Wow. Like, so when you're getting divorced, this is the other thing, that becomes your new job, because it is literally somewhere between a part-time and full-time job when you're having one of these kinds of divorces. It was the sheer volume of paperwork you have to produce. It's mind-boggling. Plus, you're dealing with the fact that it's the end of your relationship. You haven't had a chance to mourn it yet because you've just gone to war with this person you used to sleep in the same bed as. It's so emotionally, you can imagine what is like it is. And then all of the, dark stuff that being a married person was keeping in check. They're like, oh, are we coming out of the box again now? Awesome. And I think is the part about it that was the most terrifying. You're thinking, I have literally no idea how bad this is going to get, because it seems like every time I turn around, it's getting worse and worse and worse. I had to pay all of my ex's legal fees, plus my own legal fees, plus all the community costs. And then whatever you've got left over, you just have that to live on for the rest of the month. And I'm going like, I don't know how I'm going to make it to the end of the month. So finances are like, am I going to lose the house in this process because I can't pay the mortgage? Like, I don't know. Then you've got all these emotions coming out of like crazy town. I was losing my mind, absolutely losing my mind. And there was a lot of self-medicating that was going on. That leads to the insomnia. I was on a real downward spiral. Also, my gay mates weren't really any help to me because they were there to emotionally support me, absolutely 100%, but none of them have had any experience with divorces or going through one. So they couldn't really offer any wisdom on that. So I was bumbling through this thing just trying to figure out, because I didn't know anyone who'd been through one. And then I am of a generation of gay men who I've had a lifelong fear of heterosexual men, if I'm being really honest. I was born in 1971, so I'm Gen X. I came out before it was legal to be gay in Australia. So this is, my experience of high school. Like when I watch Heartstoppers, everyone was like, oh, you've got to watch Heartstoppers. It's amazing. Oh my God, I love it. And it is. It's a great show. But I'm watching it going, and all my friends are like, oh my God, I just couldn't stop crying when I was watching it. I'm watching it. I'm thinking, these are your problems? This is your problem in high school? Like, I was jealous. I was so jealous of them, because my experience of high school was, I have to get out of this place with my secret intact, alive. That was high school for me. So, and that stuff, like if I have to think about everybody I went to high school with, I couldn't name straight away the people I was friends with in high school, but I could say their names right now. The first and last names of the two guys that used to beat me up. That gets hardwired. I'm from that era, where we were, we went through, when I was in my 20s, in the worst part of the early 90s, I was going to 2 funerals a month, and people I used to work with, I used to share an office with this person. 4 months later, they disappear one day because they're not feeling well. 4 months later, you're at their funeral. And there was not a government coming to help us out. In fact, a lot of people thought we deserved it. So I'm out of that era. So I mean no disrespect to any, and I do not speak for younger generations of LGBTQ plus people who have a different experience in that. And thank God, it's changing. Thank God. But, I have spent my entire life hanging back a couple of degrees from straight guys. And I'm always like, all right, are you a cool one, or are you one of the ones that wants to kill us? I'm just going to hang here and wait a bit, which is not fun when you have a straight girlfriend and she's bringing the new guy in to meet the gays. I mean, that's a tough room, man. So there I am, mid-divorce, mind going crazy, job going crazy, not knowing who to turn to. My job was no help at all. And so if you're working with someone who's going through a divorce, please have empathy for them, because whereas we have like bereavement leave for, if there's a death in the family, or long illness, or, parental leave, sabbaticals, there's nothing for people going through divorces. And it's literally bleeding over every part of your life. Like the person you're talking to who's going through a divorce is probably having their finances completely with 6 ways to Sunday. They might be looking for new housing. They're maybe trying to figure out where they're going to send their kids to school or how they're even going to raise two kids in two houses. Depression, anxiety, failure, probably like maybe a bit of self-medicating or a lot like I was doing. And there's no compassion for this in the workplace. And I actually think it's probably the greatest unaddressed mental health issue in the workplace. It was terrible, because I'm going to work every day and I'm thinking I'm going to lose my job. Like everything that everyone puts in front of you is completely banal because your life is falling to pieces. And I'm like, I'm going to punch someone. I'm going to like yell at someone and lose it. I'm going to throw a desk out the window and they're just going to march me out the building. So then I thought, well, who can help? And then I'd heard about this guy at work who'd gone through a horrific divorce with his ex-wife. I'd heard it was like he was famous for it. Like people used to whisper about it and had kids and the works. And
that's never good.
Not good. And he was at work one Saturday and I went over to him and I was just like, hey, dude, I heard you went through a pretty brutal divorce. Like we're the only ones there because it's a Saturday. He goes, yeah. I said, look, I don't know if you heard, but actually I'm getting divorced as well. And this guy turned around and he looked at me and he said to me, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. And then he leaned in and he's like, what do you need to know? And it was like immediately, it was wild because he got it. He absolutely 100% understood what was happening. And it was the first time where I thought, oh, thank God someone gets it. Someone gets it. Because while you're going through it, you can't explain it. It's like having a kid. Like I imagine I've never had one, but you cannot explain it till it's happening to you. And I said to him, I don't know what to do with the rage. I am terrified of myself. I don't know where to put it. I don't know what to do with it. It comes out of nowhere. I don't know what to do. And he did this thing where he looked away for a minute and went, oh yeah, that. And then he turned around and he dropped some science on me. And he just was like, okay, here's what you need to do. And he started going, okay, you got to get in your car every morning it's LA, we're all in cars. And he goes, imagine your ex-husband or your husband. That's the other thing. We don't have a word. We have fiance for the way in. We don't have like to be ex on the way. Like we're very bad at the endings of things as a society. But he said, imagine he's there and just say everything you need to say to him on the way to work. Scream it out. No one else is around. Whatever you need to say, and you will arrive at work and you're ready for the day. I was like, okay, that feels like it's going to work. That's cool. And then he said, and then you need to get into some kind of sport where you hit things, martial arts, kickboxing, something like that. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm more kind of like yoga, cycling kind of dude, like, meditation. He goes, yeah, you'll see. There's a kickboxing gym around the corner from work. You should enroll. And he was right, man. The minute my fist hit a bag, I'm like, okay, this is it. Through James, I met all the other divorced guys at work. And you know where you can find them? If you're ever looking for a bunch of divorced straight guys, go to the closest bench outside the building where you work, and that's where you'll find them. And there's a place called the Divorce Bench outside. I didn't know it was called this, but it's called the Divorce Bench. And it was like, here are all the dudes who all started smoking in their divorces, right? And we're all out here like, and it was this brotherhood. And every single one of them had been through it. They understood exactly what was going on to me. They were fascinated about hearing how it worked for two dudes. The support I got from those guys, like how to deal with lawyers, how to use a lawyer, what to have them do, what to have them not do. It was invaluable. And then emotionally, the emotions of going through a divorce, like how to handle yourself, they picked me up on things that I was doing. And like, you can't do that here. You can't do that at work. This is what's going to happen if you keep doing that. And you're like, oh, I never thought about that, because they've been through it. So the next thing I found, I was in the Straight Guys Divorce Club as an honorary member. And it was, without doubt, the closest I've ever been to being in Fight Club. It became this brotherhood that I could tap into at any moment. It would be the divorced guy who's driving the Lyft, taking me to the concert. It's the divorced guy I meet at the bar after the gig, who recognized, he saw that there was this dent on this finger where the ring used to be. And he looked and went, how long's your divorce been going for? I was like, wow. There are the cues, when you know what to look for. And then I suddenly realized I have this in common with him. And what I had felt as a married guy and how I had these feelings of equality that I loved, in the straight world, that did not compare at all to the brotherhood of the divorced men. Like that, we are survivors of the same shipwreck. I got to know straight guys in a way that I never thought I would have in my entire life. And we shared this thing now. We had this experience in common, this thing that really hurt. And it bonded us. And once you get past the shared experience, then you start sharing all these other things that are actually maybe a little out of sight. And I really got to understand what it was like to be a straight guy walking through the world. Because these guys I'm working with, these are good dudes. These are not, there's no cabal of evil straight guys. How can we make the LGBTQ people miserable today? I mean, maybe there are some, but it's not the guys I'm working with in an agency. To actually hear what life was like for them, the conversations we're having in the world about binary and male female, what I didn't realize until I went through this is that it is as destructive for heterosexuals, because there's not a single heterosexual man or woman on the planet who has not had to cut off some part of themselves to fit into their culture's idea of what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. And I realized now, when I was in deep with these straight guys, just how wounded and damaged and mentorless they are. They have become men in an age where the idea of what a man is has changed so drastically. And to be honest, they're all a bit lost, looking for role models because they don't know how to act. And I felt for them in a way I never thought I would feel for these guys. And what it made me realize was I was a gay guy who went through a divorce. So I was a gay man who had to befriend the people who were my oppressors or benefited, in my ideas then, benefited from a system set in place to help them succeed. I had to step into their friendship and their generosity to help me. And it completely cured my fear of straight men. It was gone. And that was something I'd lived with for so long, I didn't even know it was there until it was gone. And it was like, wow, that's been lurking around a long time. And then I realized I not only had to help them understand more about what life was like from my side, about what it's really like to be a gay guy growing up in this society, but I had to really understand what it was like for them and give up my own prejudices and my own presumptions about them, which were really nice and easy and convenient and fun. And what I discovered was if you're running around with a holy book of any kind in your hand, you can be as awful to LGBTQ plus people as you want because you're like, my God told me to hate you. It's like, well, no, but okay, that's what you decided to believe out of this text. But if you're a straight guy, you are the last person that everybody is allowed to make jokes about your presumed stupidity or your proclivity for violence or your predatory nature, your entitlement. And we presume that that's how they're walking around a lot of the times. Like it's easy to make people into two-dimensional villains twirling their mustaches. But when you really get to know someone, you realize like, man, we don't actually have that many differences. There's a lot more that connects us. So what this taught me going through my divorce was that we can lose our fear of our enemies if we take the worst thing that's ever happened to us and connect with someone we have all these presumptions about who's gone through that same horrible experience that is maybe our greatest shame. And then you talk to someone who's also been through it and you realize, hey, actually, this person's a lot like me.
Wow. There ain't no bond like a trauma bond.
Why do we bond so well through our traumas? It's wild, isn't it? It's like, who wants to live in a world where Billie Eilish is happy? Nobody wants that. Taylor Swift has a steady, reliable relationship. Well, there went the music industry. Gone. What is that about us?
It's nice that through that suffering, you've managed to turn it into something positive. You found a way to connect with people and hopefully help them as much as they helped you. Because like you say, like straight men struggle with, straight cis men especially struggle with like, what is it to be a man? We're not allowed to have emotions. And the only way to feel things is with your fists and all this. And like to have this moment where you can not only have like sympathy but also empathy because you know what they're going through because you've done it too. I think that's a nicer bond, not nicer, but it's a better way to look at that bond maybe is, hey, I've been through this. You don't have to do it on your own. It's gonna suck.
Yeah.
it's really gonna suck.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be just you bottling it all up and then, taking it out on someone who parked in your spot or
Right.
whatever in 6 months' time and ending up in prison.
I would say the question I hate getting asked the most as a gay man is when you're with your partner, is when a straight guy asks you, how do you decide who's the man and who's the woman? You're like, oh,
We're both men,
sure.
Otherwise it would be boring.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, and my reaction to that question has always been like, oh, dude, really?
We flip a coin.
But when I was in deep with those divorcing straight guys, and we had really gotten to this place, this one guy and I, he said to me, man, there's something I've always wanted to ask. I'm like, all right. He goes,
Here we go.
But he felt like we had built something where he could ask something he's always wanted to ask. So I was like, okay, cool, man, go for it. He goes, how do you decide who's the man and who's the woman? I'm thinking, I don't believe this. But I thought it's like, okay, let me step into this question for once in my life. I said, well, how do you mean? Do you mean sexually or emotionally? And he's like, I know exactly where my girl's at because she's always telling me. Like, she won't stop telling me about what she feels, what she's thinking, how it was, and she wants me to do this for her as well, like to give her. He's like, I don't talk about that shit. I'm a guy. He said, I'm a black guy. Like, I especially can't talk about that stuff. That's not how I was raised. I can't do it, right? And I know how much it hurts her, but I can't get through this part, right? And it's just, I'm working on it, but it's hard. I'm like, all right, okay, I can feel that. Yeah. He goes, but I know where she's at. But I guess what I'm wondering is, if it's two dudes, how does anyone know where anyone else is at? And when he said that, I just went, did this guy just explain my last 6 relationships? And I thought, wow, the question I hated the most, what it revealed to me about my own life. I'm like, we all need to talk to each other more. Because there's no way, only a straight guy who probably has no gay friends would ever have asked a question like that. And that's the last person on earth I would have sought out the company of before I got divorced, right?
And hopefully between you and the others, you can kind of work towards like being a little bit more open and a little bit more like expressive and actually feeling your emotions rather than just going, that was fine.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Which it's nice that you were able to help him take those first few steps in the right direction. That's lovely. It is an immediate kind of shum.
Yes.
Like defenses up. This again.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you actually like talk about it, it's not so much who gets the up their bum. It's more, how do you express your emotions? How do you manage all of that stuff? How do you have this relationship in a way that is fulfilling? Because as much as the sex and the paperwork and the cohabiting of it is, like, a big part of it is sharing your life with someone. And how do you actually open up and allow that to be a thing? Because it's terrifying. The terror of being seen and being known it's
tough.
Definitely,
it's hard. Yeah. I don't know, I'm so grateful for the divorce that I went through, because it really put me on this journey that I found myself in some pretty wild, strange places I never thought I would ever be. I was in conversations, and when you start on a journey, guides pop up all over the place in the oddest of places. Sometimes maybe for just a conversation, or maybe for years they'll be around, and people you never would have expected to meet. It's wild, yeah. So I don't know. I'm very grateful everything happened exactly the way it happened, because I wouldn't be the person I am now had all this shit not occurred. Yeah, I started writing this book with literally no idea how it was going to end. Didn't know what it was about, didn't know where it was going, but I just felt this compulsion to write it. And, what I'm really pleased about is I started writing it originally because I didn't want anyone to have to go through what I went through, which is to go through a divorce, not understanding what it was, how to do it, and that they wouldn't have to feel alone like I had for so much of mine. But it turned into kind of like a gay eat, pray, love. After a while, the divorce and the inciting incident of that and my husband becomes irrelevant, and it's more the journey it propelled me on. And that's the really interesting part of the story, which is the journey of a soul, like a human being who went through this human experience. And people of all genders, ages, sexualities, ethnicities are reading it and they're finding themselves in it. And, at the beginning, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's a gay book. It's only gay guys getting divorces are going to buy it. And instead, people are finding, the things that people have been writing to me have blown me away of what it's doing for them. I just hope it does some good in the world. And I hope anybody who needs something that's in my book, I hope it finds them.
The thing we haven't mentioned is what it's called.
Oh, yeah, that might help. So it's called How to Burn a Rainbow.
How to Burn a Rainbow.
Yes.
Cool. Burning down the happy ending, kind of like everything at the end of the rainbow was beautiful and wonderful, and whoops, it's all gone.
Yeah. Well, it's about like burning them. Like we get sold all these rainbows we're supposed to chase our entire lives. We get handed these scripts that we're told we're supposed to follow. And I did it all. I did it dutifully. And then, I woke up in my, mid-40s in, this beautiful house with this gorgeous man. I'm like, why am I not happy? I don't understand. I should be happy now. I did everything everyone told me to do. And that's when it all just started coming undone. Because I'm like, I've got to figure this out, because if it's not working, then I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So literally it was like, burn every script, burn every rainbow, and you need to find your own. Like, you need to figure out how you are the pot of gold. You don't have to go chasing everything.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there will be a link to buy a copy of your book in the show notes and all that kind of thing. And if other people wanted to get in touch or find out more, or like book you for speaking gigs, or just generally talk about their divorce with you, how would they do that?
They would find me on Instagram. I'm really easy to find at Karl Dunn. It's Karl with a K and no E, because we couldn't afford the E. So Karl Dunn. And I'm karldunn.com, and I'm also on TikTok as Karl Dunn. And I think I'm totally forgetting what it's called, the underscore, the lowercase dash.
You're on TikTok, but you don't know how it works. Excellent. I think that's everyone, really.
Hi.
That was Probably True, the LGBTQ plus storytelling project created to remind all of our queer siblings that we are none of us alone. If you liked it, then comment, share, subscribe, and join the Patreon. Or just tell all your friends. If you didn't like it, tell me. Come at me, bro.